Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining me. I am hoping to talk to you tonight about the physical impact of having back-to-back babies. So I've started to touch on it before about that I was in good physical condition when I fell pregnant with baby number one. I was probably at my physical peak. I was able to run. I ate really well. I swam 4 times a week and I went to Pilates class. So my core strength, my aerobic health, my nutritional value, my sleep was all at its peak, which is a pretty good place to start the ball rolling having a baby. It served its purpose when I delivered her. I had the stamina to get through that, and then in the subsequent weeks and months I was able to keep up, I guess. I was really active. We went everywhere. I popped her in the sling and went about my daily life. Everything that I did, she did in tow. We had some rest time, especially in those first couple of weeks, particularly around sleep and naps, which was helpful and necessary. All of this cumulatively made me feel quite fit and prepared for having baby number two. I went into that pregnancy being able to maintain a good fitness level, albeit during lockdown I wasn't able to swim or go to Pilates anymore, which was a real hit because I was hoping to keep my core strength in particular in good shape. I didn't have a particularly huge bump, and I think that my core strength from Pilates is responsible for that to a great degree. I am really lucky that that's actually sustained as well as it has throughout each of the 3 pregnancies. I've never had a particular issue with getting unsustainably big in the bump due to lack of support, and there is some tearing of the muscles from the last pregnancy, but nothing outside the realms of normality. So to double back on myself, going back to pregnancy number 2, I wasn't doing those core strength things that I would have enjoyed. I wasn't swimming, so my aerobic stamina was arguably reduced, but running around with a newborn was definitely compensating for that to a great degree. And I found it very helpful. I didn't feel unfit going into pregnancy number 2. Nutritionally, I was still on form and definitely meeting all the needs, and this was expressed in having really good milk supply. I was able to feed and stay hydrated in particular without very negative consequences. I guess it was all going pretty well. The only downside was probably the interruption to sleep, but was being well managed going into pregnancy number 2. So pregnancy number 2 commenced 6 months postpartum and sustained through that was a good level of fitness. Probably less than it was, but maybe more in line with a regular expectation for normal fitness compared to the slightly more intensive regime that I was used to before baby number 1. After I had baby number 2, I had a postpartum hemorrhage and was whisked from my home birth, which was blissful and wonderful and all the things that a home birth should be, into hospital because my blood pressure dropped too low. If I had have hung back by 5 minutes, maybe I wouldn't have needed that transfer, but hey ho, it happened. And I was offered an infusion and a transfusion. In fact, I was recommended to have both or one or the other, and I politely declined those offers and sustained myself as quickly as possible at home as I could get. with iron supplements, with kale, and with apricots. And within 3 weeks, my iron levels had gone from being super, super scary low to being back within normal limits. I have never felt, for all I have a fatigue-related disorder, I've never felt fatigue like having the hemorrhage. So there is no pushing through it. There is just the brick wall and you can't go any further. Having another infant to take care of and a brand new baby, hitting that wall is tricky. So stairs were almost a no-no. It would take me a really long time to get upstairs and I would be panting with each one. So leaving a lot of time to be able to do transitions and routines with the children was really, really necessary. I did recover, and although I don't think I've got anywhere back to where I was before baby number 1 or even my pregnancy with baby number 2, I haven't lost it all, so to speak. So having 2 very small babies requires a certain amount of physical activity. It just does, especially when you don't have a robust support system. The onus is on me to be able to meet all of the needs, and a lot of that is being up and down, especially when you get into pre-walker and toddler territory, which comes about much quicker than you expect. Additionally, I breastfed all 3 of my babies. I tandem fed when baby number 2 arrived, tandem fed for a year. And that takes a lot of calories, it takes a lot of hydration, and it takes a lot of physical fitness. Your body needs that aerobic exercise, I think, to be able to maintain it. And it's not something to take lightly or to think that it will just be okay. When baby number 3 was conceived, I started to struggle a bit with the pregnancy. And a lot of that was to do with the elasticity in my joints not recovering. So I'm hypermobile anyway, which means that my joints flex outside of the normal, or what you would hope is the normal range of movement. So I have to be really careful when I do Pilates, yoga, swimming, that I don't overexert the joints as it is. I don't lock them out, in particular with my knees and my hips. So I didn't really feel that so much at all until pregnancy number 3. In pregnancy number 2, my son's head was lying in a weird position and was grinding a lot on my coccyx. So I have quite a lot of issues with sitting and tailbone strain now, which obviously is it impedes on your mobility. Definitely, it makes it uncomfortable. Anything that involves pain, ongoing pain, is going to be noticed in daily life, I guess. So that was something to definitely be mindful of. You have issues that arise in pregnancy with loosening of joints that can happen in any pregnancy to anybody. There doesn't have to be any pre-existing condition for things like that to emerge. So it's something to be mindful of. If I had had the discomfort that I'm facing now, the hypermobility that I'm facing now in an earlier pregnancy, maybe in pregnancy number 1, it is debatable whether I would have been so keen to have another baby so close together, if at all. So it is worth bearing in mind that these things happen, and their impact is profound. So I had the coccyx issue going into pregnancy number 2, and I tried to go back to the physio to be able to lessen the impact of that, but it didn't really fit around work, and the physio was a bit hit-y-missy with appointments, so that never really got off the ground. So I didn't have the physio support that I should have or could have or would have liked to have had, which is another factor, I guess, to be prepared for. The alternative of that is to make sure that the funds and the resources are available to go private and to pay for a physio. If you're outside of the UK, then whatever the normal is with your system, think about how to factor that in the UK. We have the NHS for frontline, free at the point of delivery medical interventions. It's getting weird now as time goes on. More things are not free at the point of delivery, especially with specialist service or allied health services like physios and speech and language and so on. So something to keep in mind anyway. Pregnancy number 3, I really struggled with the elasticity in my joints, the loosening of my joints. I have been very pro baby wearing all the way through this journey. I've worn clicky in baby wearing and slings, semi-structured slings. When baby number 2 came along, I lived and breathed for my semi-structured sling as a back sling, so that my toddler could go on my back and my newborn could be wrapped on my front. And baby wearing gets really, really difficult with joint-related issues and physical fitness. So where I could have carried both babies before baby number 3 up a hill, in the north of Scotland, I definitely would struggle to do that now and would potentially damage myself in the long term to do that in my current state now. There has been a lot of discomfort. Fortunately, it didn't impact the pregnancy, but I think there would be a lot of strength-based training, core strength in particular, to do before I got into an aerobic routine now, an impact related like running or cycling. Swimming I could get away with because it's generally low impact, but definitely considerations that I have in my brain. And being a health researcher by trade, I spent a lot of time looking into the whys and wherefores and what the data says about exercise in particular, and because I wanted to make sure that in whatever form it came along, it was there and present as a stable in my life. And I guess most of those originally is about mental health, and both, so kind of the data is robust and very clear about the impact of exercise. So in 2012 there was a study which said that one single exercise class can improve mood states of pregnant women, and the greater improvement was in younger, less optimistic women, interestingly enough. In 2019 there was a study into peripartum depression, and they trialled a exercise program which was aerobic exercise from 16 weeks of gestation for 60 minutes 3 times a week until 6 weeks postpartum. They found no difference between the control group, which was no exercise at baseline, and at 38 weeks in the intervention group there was a reduced incidence of depression. So that was 18.6% in the intervention group compared to 35.6%. So it's quite a good chunk lower. And then at 6 weeks postpartum, that effect was retained and was 14.5% in the intervention group and 29.8% in the control group. So they found that exercise is protective for perinatal depression. For postnatal depression, there was a systematic review of meta-analyses in 2021. So basically looking at a big pool of all of the data that was existing already, and they found that exercise produced a moderate improvement for depression symptoms, and it had a much superior effect over psychological and psychosocial interventions comparatively. So even at its grassroots effects, exercise is really good for mood, for mental health. It's well proven in non-pregnant populations and very robustly established now in pregnant populations too. Thinking about the increased elasticity of joints in pregnancy, quite often people ask the question, can you build muscle during pregnancy? And the general answer is it's not feasible to do that. But the goal can be to retain and minimize loss as much as possible and to carefully target how you do that. And the reason for carefully targeting it is because with increased elasticity comes increased risk of damaging the joints, because you have to essentially minimize the load that you're putting on joints in line with the increased elasticity. So there's a fine balance there, and the chances are you will lose muscle mass. In fact, there was a study in rats in 2023 which showed that muscle mass during lactation in particular is reduced by 23%. So that's quite a drop, really. That's nearly a quarter of your muscle mass dropped during lactation. They found that it was associated with increased tendon stiffness and reduced locomotion. And they pondered whether it's an evolutionary based design to decrease locomotion so that more energy can go to supporting and sustaining the offspring and maintaining that lactation, which is an interesting consideration, but a huge drop in muscle mass. So 3 pregnancies in 3 years, thinking with each pregnancy I've breastfed all the way through, so my lactation's been really high. I tandem fed for a year. My daughter, my first baby, was fed for 2 years and 4 months. My son for a year, and then I had a 5-month gap of feeding before baby number 3 arrived, and I've been feeding her now for nearly 9 months. So all of that lactation, reduced exercise, massively increased elasticity in joints, thinking about the impact that's having, and I'm definitely feeling the burn now. How to go about improving that in a very busy life with minimal support networks, childcare resources to be able to actually get out and about. Fortunately, having little people, I'm managing to maintain a respectable level of aerobic exercise in the form of walking and running around and lifting. I'm often quite aware that the lifting of the little people is a lot on my joints because they're really heavy. So my baby, my new baby, is 8 kilos now, and my 2-year-old is just over 15 kilos, and I haven't had my daughter weighed recently, but assume she's over 15 kilos. So I quite often carry 2 of them at a time, talking 20, 30 kilos of load on elastic joints. So there is strength training unofficially and not targeted and not done it in a measured way going on, but it is there. So there is a basic level of fitness. The goal here on in is to reduce the damaging effects of that. So to find ways and means, and I will let you know what they are as I uncover them, to be able to build that in a more strategic way into my daily life and my daily routine. And I think it's going to be probably in a very soft and gentle way. My goal for the last 8 weeks has actually been to get to the swimming pool in the morning once I drop 2 of my children off in childcare, but that just hasn't happened yet. But yet is the operative word. It will happen. My intention is that it will happen. I have all of the will in the world to make it happen, and I definitely have the long-term incentive to be as fit and well and physically stable as I can be for as long as I can be, and certainly to counteract any negative effects that have happened throughout this time. My suggestion would be, as much as is possible, to plan and maintain your exercise routine with somebody to make sure that it can be sustained over time. It's not an easy thing to do, but certainly if you're considering having babies close together, albeit even if you're considering having babies in the year apart threshold, it's still really important to consider. One of the things that popped into my head recently is that you're not supposed to increase activity during the first 12 weeks, not because it's on any kind of rigorous scientific study, but because the risk of miscarriage is highest in that period. There was a study which showed that it's in 2022 that it actually was a book chapter, and they detailed a great number of studies within that people who have to do lifting as kind of part of their occupation are more likely to experience miscarriage, and that's partly where that association has come from. However, those people are also likely to not do holistic exercise and also more likely to smoke. So you have confounding problems there. You have influencing variables that might have skewed those results a bit. Nevertheless, it's really hard to do scientific studies in that window because it's such a protected period and the risks are great, and nobody really ever wants to try to go over that. The general guidelines that come home from that review is in that chapter is that overall exercise should stay the same as it already is or during pregnancy, or be increased in active or overweight pregnant women, or if there are complications, it shouldn't be avoided but discussed in collaboration with your obstetrician. The only thing to be mindful of is doing exercise which massively increases your body temperature, especially during those first 12 weeks, because the increase in your basal body temperature does affect the development of the embryo of the fetus in those early gestational weeks. So that's the main contraindication to doing exercise in pregnancy. It's been a really informative process, really mindful, considered risk balancing of what I wanted versus the likely problems that I was going to experience. And some of them I'm experiencing now, but I'm tolerating it well because I knew that they were going to happen and because I'm not prepared to take it lying down, so to speak. This is where things are at the moment. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts about any or all of this. All of the links to the papers that I reference will be in underneath the video. Have you had similar experiences? Are you concerned about it? Is it something that you'd like to know in more detail? Have you had multiple babies and had other barriers to maintaining physical wellness and exercise routines and all that jazz? Tell me all about it. I want to know. Until next time, see ya.